All right, hello and welcome to our webinar on the FieldPoint project schedule board. My name is Isham. I'm with FieldPoint and I'll be hosting this webinar today. We're here to talk about the all-new FieldPoint project schedule board, a tool designed to help you streamline your project scheduling and dispatching activities. It's a modern and powerful tool that can help you improve your overall efficiency and customer satisfaction. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you for playback. As we move along, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them using the Q&A feature and one of our moderators will respond to you in live chat. All right, a quick high-level overview of what you can expect to get from today's session. A little bit about FieldPoint. We'll then go to a review of the FieldPoint schedule board, which was featured in a previous webinar. An overview of the new project schedule board. We'll jump into a live demo. We'll talk a little bit about the versioning requirements, and then we'll have a Q&A section at the end. Okay, so about FieldPoint, we're a leading provider of end-to-end service management solutions. We manage the full spectrum of the service lifecycle, including customers, vendors, workforce, as well as asset and warranty management. We integrate with your favorite CRM, ERP, and accounting systems, and we offer integrated payment processing. We have well over 2 decades of experience in field service management with hundreds of customers spanning across North America in a variety of different industries. This includes HVAC, refrigeration, fire life and safety, petroleum, IT services, telecom, medical devices, building management, and many more. Our objective is to be at the forefront of the digitization of the service economy and to empower our customers to really grow and better serve their customers and their respective industries. The FieldPoint schedule board, as many of you may know, scheduling and dispatching are integral parts of many field service businesses. Here at FieldPoint, we've been empowering our customers with scheduling and dispatching tools for a long time. Late last year, we introduced our customers to the schedule board, which was our latest iteration of a scheduling and dispatching offering. If you're an existing FieldPoint user, you may be familiar with either the schedule board or perhaps the resource calendar. So, why a project scheduling tool, and how is it different from the standard schedule board? The primary purpose is to alleviate some of the common scheduling pain points in a project intensive service business. There are a couple of prevailing types of scheduling. There is reactive or on demand scheduling, and this is typically in response to a customer's request for service. There's also proactive scheduling, and this is usually part of an existing scope of work or a common goal that's being managed by means of a project. It could also be something like planned maintenance. The objective is to create a dedicated space for a project manager to visually see resource utilization and availability, where we can decrease the reliance of a project manager on a dispatcher or a service manager and help streamline the scheduling process. The same could be true in the absence of a project manager, where, say, a dispatcher or a service manager can have a clear line of sight into the scheduling event horizon. All right, we can jump into a live demonstration here and take a look at what this new feature looks like. All right, so here's the environment that I'll be using for this demo. Under the project menu, we do have a new menu entry called the project schedule board. One of the prerequisites to having this menu entry available is to ensure that the advanced projects feature is enabled in your environment. Of course, you would need to be on a version of FieldPoint that does have the project schedule board, which we'll get into a little bit later. If you're an existing FieldPoint user, this is very similar to accessing the schedule board under the service menu. So let's jump right into it. So upon a successful load, this is what the project schedule board looks like. There's a few different panes that we'll go over. And we'll talk about some of the navigational pieces as well as some of the controls that are available, which are very similar to the schedule board if it is a tool that you are familiar with. So in the top pane here, we have a list of all the projects that are currently selected. And in the bottom pane, we have a list of all the resources that are currently selected. Currently, I have the project schedule board rendered in the heat map view, which basically gives you a high level overview of what your resource utilization looks like. Now, the heat map view is one of several different views that you can have when looking at the appointments, which we'll get into a little bit later. But just for variety, I can change the heat map to a more comfortable view, which gives you 4 lines of information on each tile so that you could view the appointments in this way. Now, in the interest of keeping this demo as simple and engaging as possible, what I would like to do is hide all these different panes and reintroduce them into the conversation as we need them. So we'll start off by considering the projects pane. We'll talk about the different controls pertaining to projects, and then we'll reintroduce the resources and then all the other controls on the side as we move along. Okay, so here we have a list of the selected projects. This is a personalized list based on the selection that you would have made, depending on all the different projects that you're looking after or doing the scheduling for. You get the project number and the project description on the left hand side. And then on the right hand side here, you have the customer's name as well as the estimated start and end dates. You can further expand the projects, and that would reveal the project tasks. It's separated by the task number and the task description. You can also expand on the project tasks to reveal the assigned resources as well as the appointments that have been created for this resource under this project task. So as we go along and expand more of the tasks, you get to see a little bit more of who is assigned, what appointments we have upcoming. And in some examples, you'll get to see some tasks that don't have any resources assigned to them. So, for example, under the new construction task or the excavation task, there's no expansion tab because we don't have any resources currently assigned to these project tasks. Okay, so let's talk about project selection. How do you select the projects that you're managing? At the very top here, we have a search bar that allows you to search on the existing list of projects that you have. You also have the ability to sort your projects in ascending or descending order. And then using the advanced project selection button, you're able to change your project selection. From this project selection grid, you have the ability to filter on your existing selection. You can clear all of your selection. And then using the drop downs at the top, you can view the pre-filtered lists for all projects, perhaps only selected projects, or all active projects. So if we consider all projects and then we filter, say, on the status to be approved, we can either select the ones we want or using the select all button, we can take the entire selection. You also have the ability to define custom filters in addition to what's available in this drop down here using the filters and columns icon on the far right. So as you see here, since we used one of the column headers as a filter, it did retain my filter criteria, and I can save this for future use if I want to. Or you can simply change it by choosing another column. Say, for example, you want to filter on the active status, and you could say equals, and you could say true or false. Is it active? Yes or no. So in this case, both of them will still hold. If I select false, then I don't have any inactive projects and nothing appears. You can also remove filters by deleting them from here or by clearing the column header where you originated the filter from. Hit apply and it will restore the original selection criteria. Using the filters and columns, you also have the ability to add additional columns to your grid. So if there are columns that would add value or meaning to your selection, that are not currently on the grid, you can expand your column selection like so. All right, so we'll hit save here with these two projects, and then we'll see how the grid updates to reflect our new project selection. Okay, so you can see here that our grid has updated to reflect the two projects that we've selected. On a similar topic, we have some options with respect to how we select resources. So from the resources pane down here, you have the ability to search on resources. You also have the ability to sort your resources just like we saw with projects. And then you have the ability to do your resource selection in a very similar fashion. So it's the same type of grid, only this time instead of displaying project information, it's displaying resources or technician or employee information. You have some predefined filters, and then you can add and remove resources like so. And then the list would update to reflect your selection. I am going to restore my original selection just so we have a little bit more data to demo with. And we'll do the same thing with projects. There we are. Now, on the right-hand side of the resources pane, you also have the ability to filter the resources based on some of the available filter criteria, such as the territory, perhaps, which office or region they work out of, the job role. So if you're trying to schedule for a specific job role or you need a specific skill, you have the ability to filter based on technicians. If you have contractors, perhaps, and we have a transporter in this case. You also have the ability to search based on skill group. So, for example, if you're looking for an electrical professional or an HVAC person, you can further filter that skill group by subcodes or sub skills. So, fully licensed HVAC, is it a level G1, G2, whatever the designation might be, you have the ability to filter that way. You also have the ability to clear your filters and restore the full selection like so. This will be particularly useful as we're trying to assign our resources to some of our new project tasks that don't currently have any assignments to them. So down here under the fire safety inspection, for example, we may want to add an additional resource here. And so one way to do it is to drag and drop the resource under the project task that we want to assign them to. So in this case, say for example, I'm looking for an electrical uh, technician under task 300 here. I can do a filter based on the skill group for electrical, see who shows up, and then assign them under that task. You may have noticed that some of these appointment tiles have different colors. At the top right, we have a color by section, which in our case, we're using the appointment status to drive our color coding. If you were to hover over the legend, it would tell you what the color status mapping is. This could be personalized to reflect your own colors and statuses. One very common problem when scheduling, especially when you're scheduling from a shared pool of resources, is not knowing whether or not the technician that you're trying to schedule already has existing appointments on another project or potentially another work order during the same time frame that you're trying to schedule them for on one of your own projects. FieldPoint solves for this in a couple of different ways. One of them is using the color coding, where we'll visually draw the same tiles corresponding to the other appointments from the other projects or work orders in a white or an off-white background to let you know that, for example, in this case, Barry Allen has an appointment from Project 100,002 and another appointment from Project 100,001. So that simply just by looking at this, you already know that these time slots are taken. Another way FieldPoint addresses this issue is using a built-in application setting that allows you to control whether or not you will prevent overlapping appointments from occurring altogether, or whether or not you'll allow them to occur, but you'll raise a warning. In our case, we have it configured to raise a warning. So, for example, if I try to schedule another appointment for Barry Allen on my project that overlaps with the other two appointments, it will create the appointment and it will raise a warning saying, "Warning, creating appointment. The resource has an overlapping appointment which needs to be reviewed and confirmed." It also gives you the orange triangle and this orange arrow or border around the tile to let you know that this one needs attention, but it will create the appointment nonetheless. If I had that setting configured to prevent it from happening, I would have gotten a red error message saying error creating appointment, cannot create an overlapping appointment for this resource. At the top right hand of the screen here, we can dismiss the warning. You'll notice there's a bell icon that says errors and warnings. This is our audit trail of any errors that may have occurred, as well as any warnings that have occurred during our session. You have the ability to clear them individually or just do clear all to resolve all warnings on the grid. And so you see it resolves the warning at the appointment tile level as well. Immediately to the right of that, we have the project schedule board settings. From here, there are several settings that you can control. You have the visible business hours, which you can change by sliding these endpoints here. You also have the group resources by, which allows you to group your resources by the job role, the territory, or the skill group. We have the tile density, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the demo. We started out with the heat map, which is a good overview to see your resource utilization. We have the compact, which shows you 2 lines of information on the tile. Standard, which does 3 lines, and then comfortable, which is what we had previously. We have the stacked appointment view, which basically aligns your appointments all together to save space. So when you're looking at more than 3 days of information at any given point in time, so over here, my window is set to 3 days. I can change that to a week, or I can change that to a month. And as you expand the window through which you're looking at your appointments, it makes more sense to have the appointments stacked to save a little bit more space and see more information at the same time. Going back to the settings, now that I changed my window from 3 days to a month, I have the ability to see the visible business days, and you can add additional days. So if Saturday and Sunday are part of your business schedule, you can add those there as well. Next, we have gray out non-project appointments. This will allow you to display the work order appointments on the project schedule grid and will gray out the background to visually indicate that this resource is busy at this time. However, the appointment does not belong to another project, but instead it belongs to a work order. The next setting here allows you to hide completed tasks. This will allow you to keep your project selection list a little bit cleaner and will save you a little bit of screen real estate so that you could render more information. So if I were to toggle this, our task number 100 for fire alarm inspection should disappear and then should reappear when we toggle it back. And lastly, hide task 0. So in FieldPoint, when you're creating an appointment, it is a requirement that the appointment must be recorded either against a work order or against a project task. We do allow the creation of placeholder appointments. However, you're not able to record any time against this placeholder unless you make an association to either a project task or a work order. So in FieldPoint, when you're creating a new project, we automatically create a task 0 just so you can begin recording time immediately after creating the project. In some cases, project task number 0 may not be very meaningful to you, and so you have the ability to hide task number 0 on all projects to save a little bit of screen real estate. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit save here, and we'll get started talking about the different ways that you can create appointments using the project schedule board. I will clear my filter selection here, collapse these panes on the right hand side, And perhaps we'll go back to a weekly view just so we have a little bit more screen real estate. In order to create an appointment on the project schedule board, you first need to make sure that the resource you're wanting to create the appointment for is assigned to the project task. To do this, you can simply drag and drop the name of the resource you're wanting to assign under the task that you're wanting to assign them to. So in this case, we've dragged Peter Parker, dropped him under task number 0, and now we can see Peter's name. From here, we can drag and draw an appointment tile with the appropriate duration, and once we release, the appointment will be created for us automatically. You also have the ability to right-click on an existing appointment tile and either do copy, cut, delete, or create a recurring appointment. So to copy, say right-click copy, and then right-click to paste. The same could be true to copy the appointment or to cut the appointment to a different resource. And then if you're having to create appointments for a long duration of time, so for example, if your technicians are going to be on the same job site for a week or potentially longer, you can use a recurring copy where you specify a start date, an end date, and then you hit copy. And it'll let you know that the recurring copy is complete. It will also let you know if there's any overlapping appointments. So now as we scroll down, you'll see that recurring copy happening. If we change to the monthly view, we should see some of those appointments in the future as well, like so. There are several other actions you can take from here. For example, you can move an appointment from one day to the next, from one employee to the next, or one technician to the next. You also have the ability to right click and unassign a resource from an existing project task assignment so that you can't add any more appointments for them and they can't add any more appointments for themselves if they have access to the system, either through the portal or the mobile. When you hover on an appointment tile, you'll have the ability to view an appointment summary, which shows you the project number, task number, description, customer name and address, as well as some details around the start and end date of the appointment, including any notes that may be saved at the appointment level. From here, you have the ability to drill down at the customer level using the customer name hyperlink, to the task level using the task number hyperlink, or the project number. So we'll see examples of those from here. I clicked on the project number. It brings up the project form. You can go back and do the same thing with the project task. And the same could be true for the customer. You also have the ability to double click on the appointment tile itself, and that will bring up the appointment details form. Now, this is still technically a summary of the full appointments form. You do have this button here that if you were to click on it, it would launch the full appointment form where you have even more information pertaining to rates and overrides on rates for labor, travel, and you can go back from here. You have the ability to modify appointment details from here, changing the project task, perhaps relating it to a work order, changing the service code, start and end date, as well as the labor duration. Once we close out of that, we'll be able to go back to the main appointments grid. In addition to those hyperlinks, you also have the ability to drill down on the resource by double-clicking their name from the sidebar. You can also double-click on the project itself from the project pane, and that'll open up the project. And the same is true when you're drilling down on project tasks. So for example, if we were to drill down on task number 100, it would open up that task for us and we're able to make modifications as needed. If you hit the refresh button, It will reload the projects and the resources, and it will collapse any trees that we may have expanded earlier. So it's an easy way to kind of reset the pane to its original starting position. Now, even though we're talking about projects, I had mentioned work orders several times throughout this presentation. In FieldPoint, you have the ability to create work orders under a project task, and you're able to do this in a couple of different ways. The easiest way to do it is from the project task itself. So, whether you have the projects open from the projects grid, or if you're working with the project schedule board and you expand your project and double click on one of the tasks, it will open up the project task form. And from there, you have this button that says Create Work Order. When you click on it, it will launch a transition form that will ask you for a work order type, a severity code, and potentially some other fields depending on your implementation. Once you've populated the required fields, you can go ahead and hit save and close the form, and that will generate a work order for you. The other way to do this is if you're working on a work order, whether existing or new, there is a field that allows you to specify a project task number or a project task ID, which will combine both the project number and the task number. And once you've populated that field, it will link that work order to the project. Once the work orders have been created, they will appear on a pane on the left-hand side, which we have not covered yet. On the left-hand side here, if we expand this pane, we have the work orders grid. This is essentially a list of all the work orders that are related to projects. Similar to what we saw with the project advanced selection and with the resources advanced selection, we do have some pre-filtered drop downs that show you all work orders, only the scheduled work orders, or only the unscheduled work orders. Similar to what we saw earlier, the filters and columns allow you to specify additional filters and introduce additional columns that may add meaning to the grid. On the left-hand side, we have this little arrow that allows you to either expand or collapse the work order summary section. This section provides a few more details about the work order to help you better determine how to schedule it. To schedule a work order, simply drag it and drop it against the corresponding project task combination. In this case, we have project number 100,001 under project task 200. So we could simply expand that tree and then drag this work order and drop it under that intersection. We're getting a warning here that this appointment falls outside of the technician's shift hours. This is another application feature that we've developed that allows your resources to define their working hours. It could also be used to help you define your business hours so that if you're scheduling a technician before they technically start work, you'd get this warning. It could also be configured to prevent this from happening. Going back to scheduling work orders, another way you can do it is to filter on the common fields. So, for example, filter on the project number, filter on the task number on the left-hand side, and then you could do the same on the project pane on the right-hand side so that it's visually easier to match the two together. If you were to attempt to schedule a work order from another project or another task under an incorrect project task combination, you will get an error message and it will prevent you from doing so. On the top right hand side of the work orders grid, we do have this undock grid option. If you have a multi-screen setup, or even if you're using one screen, you have the ability to undock the work orders grid section and then have it on a separate screen or side by side, and then drag and drop work orders from there onto the grid. The work orders grid will automatically redock itself once you've closed it. So in this case, once we hit close here, it will automatically come back in the same window that we had it originally. Now, I showed you earlier how to assign a resource to a project task. We saw that you have the ability to drag and drop a resource from the bottom section here under the respective project task that you want to assign them to. We also saw that if you were to drag and drop a resource under task 0, they would get assigned to all the project tasks. You also have the ability to right click and unassign a resource from a respective task. And if you're to do it from under task 0, it would unassign them from all project tasks, like so. Okay. Now, this covers the features that we wanted to showcase on today's demo. The FieldPoint Project Schedule Board is a sleek, modern, and user-friendly scheduling tool that should help you optimize the way you schedule for projects and will offer greater insight into your resource utilization and efficiency. In terms of version requirements and setup costs, the great news is you get another incredible resource scheduling tool at no extra cost. This feature is available on FieldPoint version 1185 or later. However, the later versions of FieldPoint may have some additional enhancements to this feature that may not be available otherwise on earlier versions of FieldPoint. That's it for the live demo part of our webinar. As I mentioned earlier, there are no additional setup costs associated with using the FieldPoint project schedule board. If you're on FieldPoint version 1185 or later, and if you have the Advanced Projects application feature enabled, you should be able to access the schedule board. I will point out that the latest version of FieldPoint, which is version 11.101, will be available later this month and does have some additional enhancements to the project schedule board feature. If you've made it to the end, I am grateful for your time. Thank you for joining. I know there were some questions that were being answered in the Q&A section. We'll stick around a little bit longer in case there are any other questions that have not yet been answered.